feeding the showers in. So Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, North West England, North Wales seeing heavy showers this morning, hail and thunder possible too. That rain finally ebbing away from Norfolk, which means most of eastern and southern England dry and bright with sunny spells. Only the small chance for shower here and there. Across the Midlands we may see one or two, and possibly in the southwest also. Even where we've got the showers, they'll tend to zip through on the breeze, but it will feel pretty chilly out there. Temperatures 5 to 7, maybe 8 Celsius, but add on that wind and it feels colder. The showers will mostly be of rain, but some snow over the Scottish hills, and we'll keep some showers feeding in this evening into northwest England and North Wales, so staying pretty wet here. But elsewhere, largely dry, clearer skies and lighter winds will allow a frost. You can see the blue hue on the map there for eastern Scotland, northeast England as we head into the weekend. So a cold and frosty start here, certainly in rural areas. Further west, more cloud and rain starting to spill in, so turning damp pretty quickly on Saturday morning across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. This area of rain then works in across the rest of the UK, not reaching eastern parts of England till pretty late in the day, so most of Saturday dry here, but it will, I suspect, feel pretty cold in the east, where we're going to start with some pockets of frost clouding over and temperatures only 5 or 6 at best. Further west it will be turning milder, but as you can see also wetter and windier. Plenty going on then this weekend. This set of weather fronts moving in for Saturday, and it links back to another area of low pressure that could bring some wet and windy weather in the northwest on Sunday, but will also turn things milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Inaya Falarin Iman and me, Patrick Christie's. And we've got an absolutely massive show for you today. Loads to get stuck into. Will Boris fall on his sword? Will he be pushed? Should he stay? Should he go? We've got a poll out on that as well at GB News on Twitter. But first, time for your latest news.
Good morning, I'm Olivia Guthrie. Here are the latest headlines. The Prime Minister is under growing pressure as claims about number 10 Christmas parties continue to emerge. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says Boris Johnson's unfit to lead the country after 3 gatherings were allegedly held during lockdown last December. The PM's also facing questions over whether he misled an investigation into donations to refurbish his flat. An increasing number of MPs say they'll vote against the new COVID rules next week. That's as Plan B is enforced across England in a bid to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Masks should now be worn in most indoor settings. Working from home will be reintroduced from Monday. Julian Assange is due to learn whether the High Court will overturn a decision not to extradite him to the US. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted on allegations of a conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information. US authorities are challenging a previous ruling that he shouldn't be sent due to a risk of suicide. The UK is dealing with its largest ever outbreak of avian flu, with cases now identified across 40 properties. More than 20,000 birds have been culled in Northern Ireland, and the virus has been discovered at a third property in Scotland. Exclusion zones are being set up around the affected properties. I'll have more on all those stories for you at the top of the hour.
Yes, good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Anaya Falarin-Iman and me, Patrick Christys. And we've got a massive show for you today with all of those top topics for you. So here's what's on the menu.
Absolutely. Well, a new YouGov poll says Brits question the integrity of the Prime Minister as his own backbenchers start circling. Can Boris survive? We've got a poll on that topic on Twitter.
Yeah, we do indeed. Should I stay or should I go now? Now, with the new restrictions meaning you should work from home, but you can go to the office Christmas party, which is a bit weird, isn't it? Will it change your mind about whether or not to attend?
Yes, and we can expect any changes to restrictions in Wales. Our reporter Lily Hewitson will have the latest.
And you can get involved in any of our conversations today, as usual, by sending your views over to gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, I'm going to give my views on where we are now with our latest restrictions. We haven't actually voted through Plan B yet, and we're already being warmed up for Plan C. How long before it's Plan D, Plan E? We're a long way away from 12 weeks to flatten the curve. We're a long way away from an irreversible roadmap. We're a long way from however many million jabs it was for freedom. We're a long way from normal. Look at the direction of travel. Vaccines are a good example. We'll just vaccinate the vulnerable. We'll just vaccinate the over 65s. We'll just vaccinate the over 50s. We'd never vaccinate kids. We'll just vaccinate the over 40s. We'll just vaccinate the over 30s. Don't worry, we won't be vaccinating the kids. We'll just vaccinate the students. OK, let's vaccinate the kids. Next week, MPs vote on Boris Johnson's Plan B. Now, like I said, we're already hearing about Plan C. And we know what Plan D is, don't we? It's mandatory vaccinations. And I think Boris will do it. He talks about following the science. I say the public should just follow the evidence of Boris's direction of travel and brace ourselves for mandatory jabs. I miss the days when Plan B was just a wrapper. Now it's going to be a reality. But Boris could face the biggest mutiny of his premiership. It's rumoured that around 60 Tory MPs could defy the party whip and rebel. They will no doubt be spurred on by polling data published yesterday that showed that apparently 63% of people think Boris Johnson should resign. Masks, vaccine passports, working from home, losing £4 billion a month from the economy. Plan C could involve the COVID app to check into pubs and restaurants, vaccine passports in smaller venues, masks in churches, table service in pubs, and the return to the dreaded 1 metre rule. Plan D, quite clearly, will mean mandatory vaccinations. But it would also mean something else. Boris Johnson should be warned that if he does that, he's absolutely finished. Forget Christmas parties, forget expensive wallpaper. It would just be game over on that alone. But I think it might mean something else as well. I think it would lead to a huge surge in support for a new political party. I know many people in the Red Wall, for example, who simply couldn't forgive the Tories for this government's behaviour. And then they look over at Labour, who are just blindly waving all this stuff through, and they can't vote for them either. It's sad, but I look around, and sometimes I just don't recognise this country anymore. I don't recognise this form of supposedly libertarian conservatism. I don't recognise a strong political opposition. I don't recognise our free press, who seem to pump out a lot of COVID propaganda. I don't recognise how terrified and easily led a lot of people are. I want my country back.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the Plan B joke was pretty good.
Thank you very much.
I must admit that. But on a serious note, I mean, I think the Rubicon has been crossed a very, very long time ago. When we are now in a situation where we are saying that there's a possibility or even a conversation about forcing people to take a jab, which is, in my view, actually a form of assault, when you're forcing people to take an injection that they don't want to. I think the Rubicon is far, far, far crossed now. And I think it seems the only argument now that we have is we need to save lives, but this is not evidence-based. This is not scientific. It is really crossing a line within society that I think you're right. It is really unrecognisable. I don't recognise this country now with what we're doing.
No, and I think it's still obtainable. It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because, look, we have got a poll at the minute on whether or not you think Boris Johnson should stay or go. And, frankly, the reasons why you think he should stay or should go could be numerous, could be vast. I do think it's a bit pathetic, to be perfectly honest with you now, things about the expensive wallpaper. I said yesterday, I don't particularly care that he had a party. I do care, though, that he was the man stopping us from doing stuff like that. That's the thing.
I do care about the party, though, because I think some people think, oh, this is a Westminster story or whatever, or this is just a media story. I think it is a perfect encapsulation of what is going on right now, that politicians are implementing rules and laws that they don't really seem to actually believe in.
Yeah.
But we all have to be subject to it. And then a year down the line, as a way to avoid a catastrophic story, they throw on a bunch of restrictions in order to distract. Something that is, unprecedented.
Yeah.
Locking people down is now just a distraction technique.
Well, he's played the long game here, hasn't he, Boris? He's managed to time the birth of his second child with Carrie right on the day. The kind of foresight on the guy, you've got to respect it. But yeah, look, I do think that we're banging trouble here, just on numerous different reasons. Because, look, the idea of mandatory vaccinations, I never thought we'd live in a country, especially not this country, where that would even be potentially on the table. I never thought that things would get waved through by political opposition. Keir Starmer's just can't stop scoring own goals, can he? He's like Richard Dunn in his pomp.
But I think it's really interesting the way in which people that are unvaccinated are now becoming dehumanised. And I've been seeing posters and I've been seeing, memes on Twitter where unvaccinated people are kind of portrayed as, fat, ugly, disgusting types of people that we should just be relegating to, prison or something like that. I mean, we're now dehumanising people. When you actually look at the demographics of people that are unvaccinated, it's often, ethnic minority communities, immigrant communities, the same people that ordinarily are used as the army to say don't criticise people because it's ethnic minority people. And now it's totally fine if it serves a different political agenda.
Yeah, it's strange, really, that we've ended up in this situation. But here we are. Lots of you getting in touch. Some of you saying, hey, look, I'm really sick of hearing about alleged parties and the cost of wallpaper and things like that. Yeah, all right, I am as well, but I wish it hadn't happened, right? We can't ignore it. The vultures are circling for Boris. Do you think he should stay? Do you think he should go? That's what we're asking on Twitter, at GBNews. It's one of those things, I don't really want to necessarily have to sit here and talk about it, but you can't ignore what's going on at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually what's interesting, is that it seems to be cutting through in the polls. So even if it might irritate some of us, I think actually the Labour Party are now seemingly going ahead of the Tories in the polls. I think the Prime Minister has to wake up to this reality.
Yes, indeed. Right, OK, well, look, keep those views coming in. Like Mike, for example, he just says, hey, I want my country back as well. Don't really care about wallpaper or parties, but I do care about the gutter politics that we've got at the moment, and that's fair enough. Mike, thank you very much. Well, coming up, should you go to the office Christmas party? We're told to work from home, but yet you can go to the party. What do you make of all of this stuff? It's all coming up.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. So this week, the Prime Minister said that Christmas parties and school nativities should still go ahead. He said that despite the introduction of new restrictions in England to help control the spread of the Omicron variant, the government was not suggesting children should be taken out of school ahead of the holidays or plays cancelled.
I imagine that parents up and down the country will be devastated by that news. They're going to have to sit through some more murder silent night. Anyway, the Prime Minister added that the Plan B measures, which include guidance to work from home and face coverings for most indoor venues, do not amount to a lockdown. But a lot of people have questioned why it's OK to go to a Christmas party when you're in close proximity, but not to attend work. Well, to explain a bit more on this now is Dr. Catherine Millington-Sanders, NHS doctor and educationist. Thank you very much for joining us. Personally, I'm very happy that we can go to Christmas parties. I also don't particularly want to work from home, so this doesn't really bother me, but some people are saying that it's a little bit strange, really. It doesn't seem to quite make sense.
Good morning. Well, firstly, I think it's really important that I'm a GP, so I'm not talking from a political standpoint, and my overriding concern is for patients. So if we look at some of the stats, we know that it's roughly 6 million people that are waiting for hospital treatment at the end of October, and we've got more than a third of people waiting more than 4 hours in accident and emergency. The great thing is we've done over 21 million boosters for our third vaccines. There are over 800 cases now of Omicron so far in the UK, with potential predictions of this spreading to 1 million cases by the end of the month. There are 3 key facts that are really important for us to understand, and not all of this evidence is available yet for Omicron. So that's how transmissible the virus is, this particular variant is, how severely unwell people become when you contract Omicron, and also how much of the Omicron will escape the vaccine. So we're seeing that it's highly transmissible, so we're seeing very large numbers. And so you can imagine if you're having a Christmas party and there are lots of people in a small room, no ventilation, maybe a little bit merry, where people are slightly more disinhibited, heavy breathing, really good to get the virus moving about. So we can understand why there's this opinion of having face masks, trying to work at home. I agree. There are some mixed messages of how can we have a Christmas party and yet all of us not necessarily be in an office. And it would be valuable to get much more clarity of that for people, because otherwise it's confusing for people to know exactly what they can do. But still important, we know the things that work with Omicron and COVID in all the variants. So it is face masks, it is social distancing, it's having as much ventilation as we can possibly have, washing our hands, and also getting a lab test before you potentially go to the parties. These are all the things that we know will significantly help us reduce the spread. And what we're trying to do, particularly for me as a GP and seeing people come unwell, and it's a marathon now, isn't it? It's no longer the sprint that we've had. We've been all going for 20 months. Public have been incredibly resilient and really trying to do our very best. NHS professionals also trying to do our very best. So we're now at a stage of trying to protect each other and doing the very best that we can. And it's not necessarily the Christmas that we'd all wished and hoped for with all of our freedoms, but still we can all do these things to help protect each other from all of the COVID variants. I'd strongly encourage, if people haven't had their first and second vaccines, do go along to get them. If you need your boosters and you're eligible, please do go along to get them as well. If you've had no vaccinations, there's no judgment. You're still able to go, and please do, if you want to, head along to get your vaccines if you haven't had any as well.
But Doctor, you say that you're not talking from a political perspective, and I totally understand as a doctor your priority is health, but there is something inherently political by suggesting that people's, events or even businesses should be prioritised under public health, because that is fundamentally a political decision. And I think many people would think, even though health is fundamentally important, obviously, to life and society, so is the things that make life meaningful, which is relating to one another, contacting one another, being in physical spaces, and having that kind of intimate relationship with other human beings. So why do you not see the kind of prioritisation of public health as something that isn't political?
Well, I have to talk from my standpoint, which is obviously a GP and a doctor and seeing patients. And to me, it becomes really important that we follow the science. And, as we do in science and as in medicine, we do follow the public health messages, we do follow the science and the data. And that is something that's evidence-based. It's something that's undeniable. So with things like COVID and the Omicron variant, it's really important that we follow the guidance. So far, we know it's much more transmissible, and we know the things that we can put in place to reduce the risk, particularly to vulnerable, to people that we love and care about that may be more at risk of getting and being affected by it. We don't yet know the science of how severe the Omicron cases will be, how many people will end up in hospital with it, because we're just literally seeing these weeks, only a few weeks of Omicron in the UK evolve.
But you say that the science is undeniable, but where do the public then come in? When do they get the chance, as people that aren't scientists, to be able to make decisions about what they believe is right for their own lives and families as individuals, making their own moral judgments? Because I think this suggestion that the science is undeniable is almost everybody has to follow it unquestionably. When do you think we move to the stage where we can actually make decisions over our own lives?
I think that's interesting, because I would perceive that people are and have been able to make their own choices. So we know that roughly 5 million people have not been vaccinated, and over 88% of people actually have been vaccinated. There are choices. There are choices to potentially have Christmas parties. There are different recommendations in different countries.
Yeah, sorry, just quickly, because we're running out of time, but on that point there about 5 million people not being jabbed for whatever reason, there are serious talks now, indeed from some quarters of the media as well, people who can't be named, to say that actually we should potentially be looking at restricting their lives. They're selfish, and that therefore they lose the rights and civil liberties. Would you support things like maybe, a lockdown for the unvaccinated?
I would absolutely, as I continue to say, would support the science, and I continue to be guided as a doctor by the scientific evidence. So I think that's probably...
Does the science say we should lock down the unvaccinated, in your opinion?
The science doesn't currently say that we should be locked out. There should be a lockdown for the people that are unvaccinated.
Good. OK, well, that's refreshing to hear, actually. I'm quite glad, because I was getting concerned that actually we're going to end up with about 5 million people shackled to Chris Whitty's radiator or something like that. So it's nice that we can actually get out and about.
Well, thank you, Dr. Catherine Millington-Saunders, NHS doctor and educationist.
Yes, well, there we go.
Very important conversation, and I think that it's refreshing to hear a GP's perspective on this.
100%, and there are differences of opinion on this, of course there are, but I think it's interesting, because we are now having to be confronted with questions about mandatory vaccinations and lockdowns for the unvaccinated, so we might as well get ahead of the game and see how we feel about that.
Absolutely, but I really do think we need to interrogate this idea that there is the science that is undeniable. To me, that sounds like a religion. The science is a method. It's a method of inquiry that tells you different routes and what the possible risks are, but it doesn't tell you the road to go down. That's a political decision, and that's a moral decision, and I think we are conflating science with almost like a religion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, as you raised a point there about just there are human beings involved with this, right? So science is a lot about data and numbers and quote-unquote facts, depending on exactly what they're talking about, of course. But there's actually humans behind this, isn't there? And I think it was one of those arguments that was used during the Brexit referendum, actually, where they were saying, well, hang on a minute, what if, hypothetically speaking, Brexit makes us a bit poorer as a nation. Actually, a lot of people didn't really care about that. I don't think it will in the end, by the way, but a lot of people didn't really care about that. There was something much bigger out there for play for them, like sovereignty and democracy. And that was the thing. So maybe this is a similar situation where we have to kind of front up and go, well, hang on a minute, the science might say one thing, but maybe some human beings are saying another.
Exactly. I very much echo your sentiments. Well, keep all of your views coming at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A chilly breeze blowing out there today, but for many it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. There will be some showers, these chiefly across the west. It's across the east where we've had so much of the rain through the night. It's an area of low pressure, really reluctant to clear and still bringing some patchy rain to parts of East Anglia. But elsewhere, it is looking a little drier. The winds, though, coming in from the northwest, and that's where we're feeding the showers in. So western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales, seeing heavy showers this morning, hail and thunder possible too. That rain finally ebbing away from Norfolk, which means most of eastern and southern England dry and bright with sunny spells. Only the small chance for shower here and there. Across the Midlands, we may see one or two, and possibly in the southwest also. Even where we've got the showers, they'll tend to zip through on the breeze, but it will feel pretty chilly out there. Temperatures 5 to 7, maybe 8 Celsius, but add on that wind and it feels colder. The showers will mostly be of rain, but some snow over the Scottish hills, and we'll keep some showers feeding in this evening into northwest England and North Wales, so staying pretty wet here. But elsewhere, largely dry, clearer skies and lighter winds will allow a frost. You can see the blue hue on the map there for eastern Scotland, northeast England as we head into the weekend. So a cold and frosty start here, certainly in rural areas. Further west, more cloud and rain starting to spill in, so turning damp pretty quickly on Saturday morning across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. This area of rain then works in across the rest of the UK, not reaching eastern parts of England till pretty late in the day, so most of Saturday dry here, but it will, I suspect, feel pretty cold in the east, where we're going to start with some pockets of frost clouding over and temperatures only 5 or 6 at best. Further west it will be turning milder, but as you can see also wetter and windier. Plenty going on then this weekend. This set of weather fronts moving in for Saturday, and it links back to another area of low pressure that could bring some wet and windy weather in the northwest on Sunday, but will also turn things milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Anaya Falarin-Iman and me, Patrick Christys. And we've got a massive show for you today, including some nice footage, actually, of an individual who decided to cross the channel to show how easy it actually is. So all of that's coming up after the latest news.
Absolutely.
I'm Olivia Guthrie. This is your news at 10 o'clock. The Prime Minister is under growing pressure as claims about number 10 Christmas parties continue to emerge. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says he's unfit to lead the country, with 3 gatherings allegedly held during lockdown last December now being investigated by the Cabinet Secretary. Boris Johnson's also facing questions over whether he misled an investigation into donations to refurbish his flat after he was fined by the Electoral Commission.
The credibility is gone. I mean, there's been a succession of crises, and the latest debacle is probably the final straw. So I don't think he has a future. He could even be gone, sooner rather than later. I think it's over, and I think most people recognise that.
An increasing number of MPs say they'll vote against the new COVID rules next week. That's as Plan B is enforced across England in a bid to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Masks should now be worn in most indoor settings, including cinemas and theatres, but they're not required in hospitality settings like pubs. The measures come ahead of a return to working from home on Monday and mandatory COVID passports for large venues from Wednesday. Conservative MP Craig McKinley told GB News he can't support the government. There's been a mixed response to the measures from the public.
I think the rules are full of contradictions, so I don't think they necessarily make much sense. I wonder if some of the rules are just brought into place just because they feel they have to.
That doesn't quite make sense. You either gather or you can't gather, whether it's a quick drink or a meal. There's no difference really, is there?
I think it's giving people a choice. If it's a question of working at home, you really have to do what your employer tells you. But with a Christmas party and going to the pub, you have a choice over whether or not you do that, and you can manage the risk yourself.
There are currently 817 cases of the Omicron variant in the UK. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is warning that could rise to 1 million by the end of the month. Epidemiologist Dr. Roland Salmon says the science should have been merged before measures were put in place.
Direct experience of managing infectious diseases in this country, I think, is in some ways lacking. If you get a bunch of scientists in a room to advise the government, you'll get a range of opinions from them. I think one of the things we've singly failed to do is to synthesize that in an intelligent way to have proportionate public policy.
Julian Assange is due to learn whether the High Court will overturn a decision not to extradite him to the US. The WikiLeaks founder is wanted on allegations of a conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information after hundreds of thousands of leaked documents on the Afghan and Iraq wars were published. US authorities are challenging the previous ruling that he shouldn't be sent due to a risk of suicide. The UK is dealing with its largest ever outbreak of avian flu, with cases now identified across 40 properties. More than 20,000 birds have been culled in Northern Ireland, and the highly pathogenic H5N1 has also been discovered at a third property in Scotland. Exclusion zones are being set up around the affected properties. American actor Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of staging a racist and homophobic attack against himself. The US star of TV drama Empire paid 2 brothers to stage the hoax assault and then lied about it. Prosecutors said it was part of a bid to boost his career. Smollett was found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges against him. His lawyers say he'll appeal.
We're obviously very disappointed. We obviously respectfully disagree with the jury's verdict. The verdict is inconsistent. You cannot say Jussie's lying and Jussie's not lying for the same exact incidents. So we feel 100% confident that this case will be won on appeal.
You're right up to date. I have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Now it's back to the point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin-Iman and Patrick Christys. We've got a show full of all of the big stories and big discussions that you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Well, a new YouGov poll says that Brits question the integrity of the Prime Minister. His own backbenchers have started circling. Can Boris Johnson survive this one?
Indeed. Well, Anton Deck.
It is Friday, and can we expect any changes to restrictions in Wales? Our reporter Lily Hewitson will have the latest on all of that.
And you can get involved in the conversation as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere.
Right, well, the Conservatives are having their worst poll rating in 11 months as the scandal continues over this alleged Christmas party. Now, The Times has reported that more than 2/3 of voters are also now questioning Boris Johnson's integrity over his response to Downing Street Christmas party. Of course, this was held while London was in lockdown. It's interesting, yesterday, so the day before yesterday, my inbox was absolutely full of people going, I couldn't care less about this thing now. You know, no one wants to hear about this. Then yesterday, slightly fewer of them. And then today, more people are starting to get in touch going, actually, I do care about this. Maybe you should go. And I wonder whether or not that's because he's also being introducing quite stringent restrictions and rules, isn't he? But anyway, keep them coming in.
Well, exactly. Well, joining us now is the local government editor of Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs. Thank you for joining us, Harry. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think that this is an important story that the public genuinely care about, or do you just think it's a Westminster bubble story?
I think there is cut through, as they say. I think people do care. And the problem is, for Boris Johnson, that that is a charge of hypocrisy against him and his team at Downing Street, because that, of course, unites both the lockdown sceptics, those who feel that all these restrictions are unjustifiable, that they're disproportionate and they restrict individual liberty and so on, but also those who support the restrictions or indeed want more restrictions. So everybody will be united in their irritation over the hypocrisy. So I think that's a weakness. And I also slightly remember the MPs' expenses scandal when they talk about trying to be within the rules on some technicality of, oh, well, it was really a business meeting with some catering, but instead of mineral water, we had some wine. And so it was technically within the rules because it was in a workplace rather than a private home or whatever. And if you remember the MP's expenses scandal, just saying, oh, well, it's within the rules wasn't enough. If people felt that it was that it was unreasonable, then there was still quite a considerable anger. So, and I think there is quite strong cut through on this.
Yet again, it's Keir Starmer to the rescue, isn't it? Because I mean, the fact is now, if you decide that you don't want to vote for Boris Johnson anymore and you don't want him in there anymore, you can't really vote for Labour either. I mean, they're waiving a lot of his rules and restrictions through, aren't they?
Yes, and what's happened is that I think a lot of Conservative MPs, I think the Conservative Party has ceased to be a sort of Boris Johnson fan club where they just will sort of put up with anything he says, even if it doesn't seem to have anything much to do with Conservative principles. So I think that has already happened for some time. But I think that for as long as the Conservatives were ahead of Labour in the polls, then Conservative MPs would feel it'd be rather perverse to be too critical of Boris Johnson. Certainly unreasonable to talk about wanting to replace him with someone else. But I think with that today's development, if that lasts for a while of Labour actually being ahead in the polls, I think that will change the mood. Maybe not so much in terms of any Conservative MPs coming out calling for Boris to go, but being more outspoken in terms of policy, saying, look, we're Conservatives, we want individual liberty, free enterprise, low tax, small state. That's why we came into politics. Why is the government failing to deliver? Where's the direction? Where's the coherence? I think that will become more public and more outspoken, that narrative.
Yeah, and I mean, there does seem to be a sense of a kind of growing amount of people that are politically homeless. We've seen someone from the Conservative Party defect to the Reform Party, another person, a councillor, recently defect to the Reclaim Party. I mean, what is the sense in the Conservative Party about this growing group of people in society that seem that neither of the parties feel very convincing to them?
Yeah, I think among Conservatives, both. I mean, across, Conservative MPs, party members, councillors, down to ordinary Conservative voters. I think there's a sense that they haven't yet given up generally. I mean, in the Bexley and Sidcup by-election, one response people got on the door was to say, well, yes, we're still Conservatives, but are you still Conservative? Why, where's the direction from this government? And some of them were still voting Conservative, sort of giving the benefit of the doubt. But that's not going to go on forever, and so there will be this sense now that they want to start seeing proper Conservative policies.
Well, that's it, right? And now a lot of people, and I do understand it. I mean, look, it's a very difficult thing for us to ignore, right? Because it's all over the news and it's doing the rounds completely, and it could actually lead to the demise of our Prime Minister. So we have to kind of talk a bit about the Christmas parties and all that stuff. But there's a lot of people who say, well, hang on a minute, leave off Boris Johnson. And I think a lot of Conservative voters are wondering, what are you protecting there? Are you protecting a Conservative Prime Minister? Because he's enacted quite a lot of policies that aren't particularly Conservative from where I'm sitting. I just wonder whether or not actually it would be in their interest, whether they care about wallpaper or not, to get someone in who's potentially more Conservative.
I don't think they've reached that point yet, but that thought's occurring to them. I put it that way. And it's almost exactly 2 years ago when we had the general election. Boris had this landslide, and he's delivered on Brexit. That he's forced Labour to change direction to ditch Jeremy Corbyn. So there was a lot of goodwill for him, but now it's a bit like that Janet Jackson song, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" There's now a sense of they're now wanting this clear, strong Conservative policies, and they think, well, we've got this big majority. Many of them feel that, ironically, with David Cameron, even though there was the coalition with the Lib Dems, there was more clear Conservative direction then than there is now. So. I think all governments get into scrapes. All prime ministers have resignations and scandals, and it gets on the front pages. But what matters in terms of keeping their supporters is that there's a coherence, a fundamental sense of direction, and that's really the bigger problem than the wallpaper or the Christmas parties.
But Harry, when do we get to start saying that, enough is enough? This government has an unprecedented opportunity, an 80-seat majority, a huge political realignment in 2019 when Red Wall voters who had historically voted for the Labour Party voted for the Conservatives. They kind of got Brexit done, which was meant to be this quite significant moment in British history for kind of democratic renewal.
We took back control of our fish.
There you go. But it seems that it is becoming a wasted opportunity. I mean, what can this government really show for the 80-seat majority after 2 years?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, to give an example with Brexit, that we've now got control, but it doesn't mean that we've exercised that control. So all these regulations that we've inherited from the European Union, we've still got them. We've got the power to get rid of them, but there's been very slow progress. And a lot of these things wouldn't even be particularly controversial. There are a lot of these pretty idiotic pieces of red tape. So I think they need to crack on with delivering. And I think if they do, then I think people will, in the Conservative MPs will rally around and think, oh, okay, this is what we're here for. Now we're getting back on track. I think if it can't go on forever with this drift. So I think you will see what happens in the new year.
But is Boris Johnson copping it unfairly here? I mean, as yet, there's an investigation into whether or not parties took place. We haven't seen any video footage from inside that particular party. We didn't see anything to do with Therese Coffey and mistletoe. Thank you very much for that. But we actually have seen a video, haven't we, of Mark Drakeford in Wales dancing at a party when his country was supposed to be in lockdown, all totally maskless. There is actually evidence of that. Is he getting off lightly? Should we not be calling for Drakeford to go, not Boris?
I think that is a fair point. That with the honourable exception of GBNews, I think a lot of the broadcast media will give an easy ride to people who are wanting more restrictions or pro lockdown, particularly if they're on the left in the Labour Party, and they will, there will be some double standards in that. But I think, of course, whoever's prime minister is always going to get a lot of focus and a lot of criticism.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for getting on board and imparting your sage views here. Local government editor of Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs, which is exactly the right surname, given what we're talking about at the moment regarding Boris Johnson, I find. But there we go, yes.
This government, an 80-seat majority, I listed some of those things. You know, the red wall realignment, the Brexit moment, the transformation of industry in these post-industrial regions. What do we have to show for this government?
I can't quite figure out what's going on here. You know, I think I had tremendous faith in Boris Johnson originally, certainly, and, you know, I think there can still be someone back. But like you said there, what a position of power. What majority, you look at that, the opportunity, the riding on a crest of the wave. Now, yeah, absolutely, I understand then, you know, boom, we were hit by coronavirus, and that was pretty massive, wasn't it? But you look at what's happening now, and you think, hang on a minute, we've got this green agenda that we're yet
exactly. I mean, if we can't just say, oh, look at the coronavirus, that's derailed everything. When we've had, you know, billions upon billions of pounds spent on COP26 and all of the policies that have come out of that.
Actually, I find it, but I do want to make one thing very clear, because you're getting a lot of emails in about this, which is, you know, I despair, really, because it's all very well and good, you know, holding Boris's feet to the fire at some points, but what's going on over the road, as it were? What's going on in the Labour Party at the minute? They're waving everything through when it comes to the coronavirus rules and regs. Don't seem to be making any coherent gains when it comes to the red wall seats, as far as I can tell. And you know, it's a bad time for British politics, as far as I'm concerned. So anyway, on that cheery note, let's delve into the wonderful world of my inbox quickly, shall we? So there we go. When is Boris going to stop pressing the self-destruct button and surround himself with better people? That's Gordon. And yes, obviously as well, Stephen is getting in touch to say, I think I may change parties, but never Labour. And that's the issue, isn't it? Where do you go?
Well, I mean, someone's called you a philosopher, Patrick, that sees ahead.
Look at that.
In the inbox.
Well, you know me.
Profound insights
I'm
coming from Patrick Christie this morning.
Deep thinker. and that comes across, actually, I think. That cuts through, doesn't it? Anyway, in a moment, we'll take a look at how the Omicron variant is affecting things across Europe, with a number of countries tightening their entry rules. But before that, let's get your latest news.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A chilly breeze blowing out there today, but for many it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. There will be some showers, these chiefly across the west. It's across the east where we've had so much of the rain through the night. It's an area of low pressure, really reluctant to clear and still bringing some patchy rain to parts of East Anglia. But elsewhere, it is looking a little drier. The winds, though, coming in from the northwest, and that's where we're feeding the showers in. So Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales, seeing heavy showers this morning, hail and thunder possible too. That rain finally ebbing away from Norfolk, which means most of eastern and southern England dry and bright with sunny spells. Only the small chance for shower here and there. Across the Midlands, we may see one or two, and possibly in the southwest also. Even where we've got the showers, they'll tend to zip through on the breeze, but it will feel pretty chilly out there. Temperatures 5 to 7, maybe 8 Celsius, but add on that wind and it feels colder. The showers will mostly be of rain, but some snow over the Scottish hills, and we'll keep some showers feeding in this evening into northwest England and North Wales, so staying pretty wet here. But elsewhere, largely dry, clearer skies and lighter winds will allow a frost. You can see the blue hue on the map there for eastern Scotland, northeast England as we head into the weekend. So a cold and frosty start here, certainly in rural areas. Further west, more cloud and rain starting to spill in, so turning damp pretty quickly on Saturday morning across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. This area of rain then works in across the rest of the UK, not reaching eastern parts of England till pretty late in the day, so most of Saturday dry here, but it will, I suspect, feel pretty cold in the east, where we're going to start with some pockets of frost clouding over and temperatures only 5 or 6 at best. Further west it will be turning milder, but as you can see also wetter and windier. Plenty going on then this weekend. This set of weather fronts moving in for Saturday, and it links back to another area of low pressure that could bring some wet and windy weather in the northwest on Sunday, but will also turn things milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Inaya Falarin Iman and me, Patrick Christys.
As more data is collected about the Omicron variant, EU countries are enforcing stricter entry rules. In November, Europe imposed travel restrictions on 7 southern African countries, despite calls from the World Health Organization that flight restrictions won't stop the spread of the variant.
Well, in Germany, where case numbers are rapidly increasing, vaccinations could be made mandatory by February, and the Omicron variant has seen a number of countries tightening up entry rules for holidaymakers in a bid to stop the curve of the new COVID variant.
Well, that includes some popular holiday destinations such as Spain and France, which have introduced new entry requirements, while holiday spots including Switzerland and Austria also have rules in place ahead of ski season.
Yes, it turned out that the skiers were the super spreaders initially, didn't it? But there we go. For more on this is journalist Alex Story, who joins us live now, all the way from Austria. Thank you very much. What's it like over there for you at the minute? I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago and it was looking a bit bleak.
Well, it's unfortunate. There are two things happening. The sun is shining and it snows at night. So you've got a great combination of a great outdoors, a lot of snow. Unfortunately, no skiers because it's been in lockdown for quite some time. And the restrictions that the Austrian government is talking about will ease for 2G for people who have the vaccine and for people who are immunized. The issue there, obviously, is that the Austrian government is saying, welcome to Austria. You can come with a PCR test, but if you do come with just a PCR test and you're obviously testing negative, there's nothing you can do when you arrive. And given that the temperatures are below zero and freezing, if you can't go into a hotel, Austria is not going to be very, very welcoming for you and for your family.
And it's a similar picture. Well, it seems to be an ever-increasing picture around Europe as well now. Doesn't it? Germany potentially about to introduce mandatory vaccines as well. You know, in Greece, we're seeing the idea now that if you're unvaccinated, you have quite big restrictions on your life. Slovakia, for example. I mean, it's the Netherlands as well. I mean, there was some pretty fruity stuff that happened there. It's all gone very quiet about when police may or may not have opened fire on a couple of people who were quite a big crowd, actually, who were protesting. But is Europe under the thumb here? Do you think there's a risk of it becoming very, very authoritarian?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's some pretty scary stories. I mean, just have to go north of Austria, which is obviously Germany. And there are 3 stories, I think, that tell a really good story. The first one was reported in Die Welt, which is the equivalent of The Guardian. in Germany. And it's essentially about the ritual humiliation of children who are asked to go to the front of the class and state their vaccination status daily. Those who are vaccinated are applauded. Those who are not have to explain why they're not. So that's the one story I think that really kind of should raise an alarm bell for people who are for the mandate. The other one is the discussion of wristbands for people to go shopping, and those people who don't have the wristbands won't be able to go shopping across a multitude of stores. The third one, which I think is possibly more reminiscent of 1930s Germany, was an attack on coffee shops who were giving out coffees for free for people who were either vaxxed or unvaxxed, and that was in Berlin, and it was reported in the Tagesspiegel. And in fact, the campaign against that these various coffee shops was launched by the Tagesspiegel itself. So you see, there is a real darkening of the moon, regardless of the fact that the sky is blue. The death rates from the vaccine, from the virus, have plummeted. So it's not quite as nice as it seems.
No.
I mean, one of the things that really frustrates me is that when we have this demonisation of the unvaccinated, is that it actually affects all of us, even people like myself who have been vaccinated. If there was actually a sense that, you got the vaccine and everything goes back to normal for you, then I might be even more understanding of the rationale. But actually, even if you've had your vaccine, then you have, vaccine passports. You still have to suggest various different measures in place, like masks if you're going, traveling or in shops. So even for people that have had the vaccine, it doesn't seem to really be getting back to normal life or freedom either.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The other thing is that it really breaks friendships, because you start and creates tensions within families, because you don't always see eye to eye with your spouse, and you might have different views on a variety of things. And so I noticed that in Germany and in Austria. I speak to a lot of people across the cities of these two countries. And the first question is a really personal one. The first question that people ask you is your vaccine status. I mean, I don't go around asking people if they've got a vaccine against herpes. I mean, it would be maybe something that we should try and introduce just to make people realize just how uncomfortable a question that is. But the interesting thing is, as we even see broadly in our rhetoric, the US's biggest online dictionary, Merriam-Webster, describes or defines an anti-vaxxer as somebody who is against the vaccine mandate, which, if you think about it, is a very binary view of looking at this particular issue.
I agree completely. What's the economic situation like at the moment, Alex? Because we were having a chat off air actually about this, and we're looking now, obviously the economy, certainly in this country anyway, massively took a hit at the start of the pandemic, naturally. And then it started to look like we were emerging out of this now. We were getting a bit of economic growth. And then all of a sudden we were slapped with a load of green taxes that, as yet, we haven't been consulted on. And then now we're potentially going to enact something that could cost us £4 billion a month, which is quite a lot of money, really, when you consider it like that. What's the state of play across Europe? Is Europe getting poorer?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course they are. Inflation rates are extremely high. If you think about Germany, or if you look at inflation across the EU, it's around 5%. Specifically for Germany, it's much higher than that. So there are two things that are linked, actually. If you think about where we are and why we've done the things we've done, the only reason why we've gone into lockdown is because politicians thought they could afford it. And the reason why they thought they could afford it is because suddenly in 2008, after the financial crash, people thought that you could just print money. Without this idea of being able to print money, there would have been no lockdown. There would have been a 1950s type of American view of the pandemic, which is we have to look after the people who are most vulnerable. We have to look after the old, the infirm, but we've got to go about our lives. We've got to be able to go out and do sports. We've got to work. We've got to be able to do all these things without restrictions. I think the issue is that the governments have essentially decided that they could print their way, they could print money and solve all issues. And that's the really big issue that will make sure that that the entire EU, but Germany and Austria specifically, are impoverished year by year.
All right, Alex, thank you very much. And look, it's fantastic to have you on. A good look where you are as well. And look, I'd like to keep getting you on, actually, as we, get updates from across Europe. You seem ideally placed to do that, so thank you very much. Journalist Alex Story. Yeah, whizzing you through what is, frankly, pretty depressing stuff on the continent.
Well,
but there's something else going on.
Absolutely. Well, we've just had some news coming in right now. The US government has won its High Court bid to overturn a judge's decision not to extradite WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Assange, 50, is wanted in the US on allegations of conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information following WikiLeaks' publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents relating to the Afghanistan and Iraq war. So this is, pretty significant that they have overturned this, and this may mean that Julian Assange will be extradited to the US, and he was staying. I think it was staying in an embassy for several years, trying to fight off charges on other allegations in another country. So this is quite significant.
Yeah, this is significant, actually. I mean, it is massive. Where do you stand on this? Julian Assange is quite a divisive character, of course. GB Views at GBnews.uk. But just to whiz you through, so Julian Assange is now closer to being extradited from the UK to the US, frankly, than he was before. The US government has won the latest stage in its extradition bid. In January, a UK court, you may remember, ruled that the WikiLeaks founder could not be extradited due to concerns over his mental health. But he is wanted in the US over the publication, as Anaya said there, of thousands of classified documents in 2010 and 2011.
Yeah, and he has been actually confined in Belmarsh, which is a maximum security prison in London, since April 2019. So, as you rightfully mentioned, it is quite a divisive issue. Some civil liberties activists suggesting that he was just exposing information, whilst other people argue that the leaks actually put defence and security officials at risk.
A bit of a wider context as well to this, which is the relations between the UK and the US. Obviously, it's not we don't tend to see each other in court that much, do we? And it's interesting, really, that they clearly have been going to battle over this, as it were. But moving away, we'll bring you the latest on that, obviously, throughout the show, and keep those views coming in as well. GB Views at GBnews.uk. But coming up, Ant and Dec. They've been.
I'm Olivia Guthrie. Here are the latest headlines. And as we've just been hearing some breaking news in the last few minutes, the United States has won an appeal in the extradition case against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. The High Court overturned a previous ruling that he shouldn't be sent to the US due to a risk of suicide. Assange is wanted on allegations of conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information. Prime Minister's under growing pressure as claims about number 10 Christmas parties continue to emerge. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says Boris Johnson's unfit to lead the country after 3 gatherings were allegedly held during lockdown last December. The PM's also facing questions over whether he misled an investigation into donations to refurbish his flat. An increasing number of MPs say they'll vote against the new COVID rules next week. That's as Plan B is enforced across England in a bid to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Masks should now be worn in most indoor settings. Working from home will be reintroduced from Monday. The UK is dealing with its largest ever outbreak of avian flu, with cases now identified across 40 properties. More than 20,000 birds have been culled in Northern Ireland, and the virus has been discovered at a 3rd property in Scotland. Exclusion zones are being set up around the affected properties. I'll have more on all today's main stories at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, welcome back everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Inaya Falarin Iman and me, Patrick Christie's.
Well, today the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, will lead a press conference outlining his government's 3-week review of COVID restrictions in Wales. Our Welsh reporter Lily Hewitson is across this story for us today. Lily, do you have any indication of what we can expect from Mark Drakeford this afternoon?
Well, there's no expectation of any significant changes to the COVID rules here in Wales today, and there's an expectation that Mark Drakeford will take his usual careful and cautious approach, especially as we learn a little bit more about this Omicron variant of coronavirus. But rather than implementing any restrictions, it looks like Mark Drakeford and the Welsh Government are going to be asking people in Wales to do a little bit more, taking a lateral flow test if you're going to a Christmas party, perhaps going shopping, or if you're meeting anybody out of the house. Also taking the invitation for the booster vaccine, which is, we're expecting that every adult in Wales will have received that invitation by the end of January. And also there's a little bit of changes to face masks. We've been wearing them throughout here in Wales in certain settings, but we will be asked to wear them if you're in a pub or a restaurant and you're not eating from now on. I'm currently stood outside the Principality Stadium, which is just behind me, and you may remember a couple of weeks ago this was the home of the Autumn Internationals, so this was full of rugby fans. It felt like a little bit of normality. It was complete full capacity, but next weekend when the Stereophonics and Tom Jones are meant to be hosting their huge gigs, that's now been postponed. They've been postponed until June of next year because of concerns of the Omicron variant, although there's only 9 cases here in Wales. But with those gigs, that comes with concerns for the industry. So the music and nighttime industries become a little bit concerned that the cancellation and postponing of those gigs could mean that winter could be a little bit different for them. But of course, nothing is confirmed at the moment. There have been concerns about COVID passes being extended into the restaurant and pub industry as well. But it doesn't look like that's going to be confirmed today at today's press conference. However, there are reports and rumours about a phone call that took place with the First Ministers across the UK on Wednesday night, where Mark Drakeford suggested to Michael Gove about the possibility of a lockdown between Christmas and New Year. Now, this hasn't been confirmed. I've gone to Welsh Government for a statement. They said they don't comment on personal discussions. However, they do say they don't anticipate to make any significant changes at the moment.
Yeah, Lily, I was quite keen to get your views on something. I've not had you on the show for a little while, actually. It was to do with Mark Drakeford and when he was maskless, dancing away and stuff like that. We're obviously seeing what's happening with Boris at the moment, and he's well and truly under the cosh. I just wondered what the mood was like on the ground there. Were there many calls for him to resign after that at all?
I'm not here to give my opinion as a reporter, but I think as across the entirety of the UK, people are very frustrated about the situation in number 10 at the moment, although there's nothing confirmed. But that plan B that is starting to be implemented in England, I think people in Wales and not thinking too much about that because, we've been in quite a similar situation here, throughout, since the summer months, really. The restrictions that are kind of being implemented over the next week or so in England are very similar to what we have going on here. When it comes to mask wearing, when it comes to working from home, it's very similar to what is going on here in Wales. But I think people are equally frustrated. It was a very frustrating time, Christmas last year, for people across the UK. Reports that there were parties, is not being taken too well, especially here in Wales.
Well, thank you very much, Lily. Great stuff. Lily Hewitt's in there. He's been across that story for us all day. Right, well, moving on.
Well, should political point scoring be allowed on entertainment shows? Fans of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here took to social media to complain about presenters Anton Deck poking fun at the Prime Minister's Christmas party saga.
Well, showbiz correspondent Selina Cherry joins us now, I believe. Thank you very much. Yeah, some people are saying that, hang on a minute, Anton Deck, you watch I'm a Celeb for a little bit of light entertainment. You shouldn't have to politicise it. What's going on?
You know what, I would usually agree with you guys, and I would usually say there's no place for politics in shows like that, blah, 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 blah. But I have to say it was great to hear Anton Deck say that. What's happened in the past week is absolutely disgusting. And I think that we have to make some kind of light of it. We have to all be talking about this because it's just not right. And I think Anton Deck did exactly what they should have done and made fun of it. I mean, if we don't laugh about this, we're going to cry, right?
Selina, I mean, even if we all think it's not right, isn't that the place to debate that on a political show, where there's plenty, across television? And actually sometimes, even in, important, heated political moments where you're oversaturated with all of these news, that actually sometimes you just want to have a bit of freedom away from all of that.
I hear what you're saying totally, but I think what has happened in the past week has affected every single one of us in every single way. And, Anton Deck, they probably spent last year not with their families, like most of us did. I know I did. We were at home. We'd usually have all the family round. None of us did. We followed the rules. We listened to the government. And then to find out that they're having a party and drinking cheese and wine and having a good time while we're all sitting at home panicking is the absolute wrong thing to do. And I think it can cross over into a show like this, because everybody needs to be talking about this and everybody needs to do something about it.
How is actually I'm a Celebrity going this year? I'd heard a couple of, I must admit, I've not actually watched a single minute of it this year, but there were some pretty dodgy things going on, weren't there? Wasn't Richard Madeley pulled out or something like that? And
he got ill, so he had to go. Then there were 3 others that were suspected to be ill. Then we had the storm, so they had to come off air for about 4 or 5 days and then come back into it again. So really, they were quite lucky because they got to have a little bit of luxury and then come back into the situation. But yeah, it's been a bit turbulent, this I'm a Celebrity, but it's been really fun to watch, actually.
OK, all right. I believe we can actually see a little clip now of Anton Deck talking about this.
Oh, but I mean, isn't that political? He said it's clear as day. We all saw this, but actually the government denies it. Some figures in the government say it didn't happen. I mean, they've had some very interesting phrases. There was one that I heard: the party didn't happen, but I've been assured that if it did happen, the rules weren't broken.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. In the beginning, it wasn't straight up. Oh no, we didn't have a party. Yeah. It was all the rules were adhered to. And you're thinking to yourself, well, why don't you just say you didn't have a party? So that's when people got suspicious. That's when people thought this is a joke, And so, therefore, no one's answering questions. No one's giving proper, definite answers as to what happened. And that's what's making everyone completely confused. They're still not saying. I mean, I know Boris came out, I think it was today or yesterday, and said that there was no party. Why has it taken him so long to now say there was no party? Only because he's realising now that he might have to step down. Like, this is a really serious matter.
Well, I think you raised some compelling arguments, Selina. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Showbiz correspondent Selina Cherry. I mean, the thing is, there's been some GB News viewers sending in saying, we shouldn't be reporting this, but actually, it is a big issue in the country.
Yeah. Would you go on I'm a Celeb?
No, I've actually, I feel awful, but I've never watched it in my life.
No.
I've literally...
Maybe that's the way to do it then, just go in completely cold, because if you have seen it before, there are certain elements of that show that I wouldn't particularly fancy doing.
But they made it wasn't like, you know, I'm going to send you a message. They were joking about it. I think it was probably a bit of fun.
I think it was probably just a bit of a laugh, wasn't it, from Anton Deck? Anyway, there we go. Right. In the government's first published scorecards relating to rape cases, revealed the Crown Prosecution Service will fail to meet its performance targets after a collapse in prosecutions for the crime.
The scorecards show that while police have made progress in increasing the number of referrals for rape, the number of charges made by the CPS has only risen slightly. Felicity Jerry QC is a barrister of Libertas Chambers and is also an author of Sexual Offences Handbook and joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Felicity. I mean, one of the things that worries me, I mean, is some of the problem also targets? If we have targets for certain police actions, does it mean that it's sometimes almost bound to fail when you actually set a target?
No, look, these scorecards mustn't be seen as a solution to a very complex problem. Essentially, what it is an element of accountability.
OK. Just
being charged, how they're being charged, how charging decisions are made. I don't know whether you're losing me now. Have you got a connection problem?
You're back in the room. Apologies. You froze in a way that made it look like that you had just stopped talking. So I just started asking you the question.
No, I'm definitely talking. Look, I think it's really important to look at what these scorecards show, which is the terrible rate of charging. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of complaints of rape that are simply not charged. Now, we can analyse the problems with delay, the issues in relation to the way in which we do cases that do get to court. But what the scorecards really show is that there seems to be a massive disconnect between the number of rape complaints there are and the number that get to court. And those figures don't seem to change. So I think the scorecards are useful to give us an insight. There's some good research that shows actually the scorecards don't break it down enough. We're not looking, for example, at black women or LGBTQI women or men who are subject to rape, who are subject to being raped. So I think it's naive to say, oh, let's not have a target, because plainly these are really serious issues that we need to get to grips with. Violence against women and girls, violence against the LGBTQI community, and the very hidden sexual violence against men who find it very hard to complain are serious issues that we need to tackle. But at the same time, making sure that our trial process is fair for those persons who are accused. Really complicated stuff.
And Felicity, I mean, why is the charging rate, let alone the conviction rate, so low? Because the UK seems to have some of the lowest in Europe. And I know there's been debate over the last few years about potentially even, you know, reducing the burden of proof, which brings a whole nother set of challenges in and of itself. But why do you think it seems so difficult to charge people?
Yeah, look, there are so many reasons that I think we still have to accept that it's complex. But one of the major reasons is that people don't want to engage in a system where they're frightened of the way in which the system works. And there's been a lot of progress on that. We now have to have specialist lawyers who are trained, that they don't cross-examine people in an aggressive way, that there are special measures, for example, pre-recording evidence or using screens or clearing the court so that people can give their evidence. Judges now are required to give myths and stereotypes directions, so there's no stereotypical attitudes in court, or hopefully no stereotypical attitudes in court. And so I think people are frightened of engaging in a system that they don't necessarily realise that those systems are in place.
Yeah. It is a sad fact as well.
Sorry.
It's right. It is just because I've sat in as a reporter on numerous rape trials and stuff, and it is a sad fact, isn't it, that actually sometimes it can just be incredibly difficult to prove. Unless you were there sometimes, it's very, very tricky sometimes, isn't it, to actually prove that it happened.
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that, actually. And if you look at the statistics in trials, I think it varies over the years, somewhere between 55 and 70% of conviction rates of cases that go to trial. And that means the system is working. Some people, the vast majority of complaints are correct and people are found guilty. And there are some where the jury can't be sure, so people are found not guilty. That's a trial system that's working, perhaps not to its best, but 0.6% of complaints are charged. That's the figure you've got to focus on. So it's not that it's hard to prove.
Well, they're not charging them because they don't think they can prove it.
Well, I don't think that's correct. It can't be. It can't be that thousands upon thousands of cases are not provable. It must be that there's a failure in investigations, in disclosure, in taking what people say seriously, in lack of resources. It may well be that specialist investigators are not available, in a failure to recognise what people need in terms to make those complaints. You're not really going to want to walk into the front of a police station to give that type of complaint. In the funding of services for people who've suffered abuse so that they can find a way to tell their story. In the buildings that they're asked to do it in, we have these disgusting court buildings at the moment in England and Wales. So finding suitable circumstances stories so that you can understand that they're perfectly provable.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, well, I'll tell you what, I think it's
Sorry, have you lost me again?
No, you're back again. Don't worry, it was all good. We just a couple of seconds of silence, but it was all good. Felicity, thank you very much. It's obviously a difficult subject to talk about, but it's good to have the chat with you. Felicity Jerry QC, who's a barrister at Libertas Chambers and also an author of the Sexual Offences Handbook.
Well, also, many groups have expressed their anger at the possibility of yet another Christmas lockdown, from banks to bars to sports fans and teenagers. Each of these groups have their own valid reasons for resenting the government's incoming restrictions. But there is one organisation which has remained oddly silent throughout: the church. Rather than making an argument for its services being essential, many churches have closed their doors to the British public.
Yeah, it's a strange one, this one. And so I went to church the other week, a few weeks ago, and I found it a slightly bizarre experience for me. I don't go too regularly, but I decided to go, and masks everywhere. You know, obviously everyone's got the masks. You've got to we had to write our phone numbers down at the start of it, and I think back in the day, my understanding was anyway that church doors didn't really particularly close, and unfortunately people used to break into churches and steal stuff and things like that. And so now the doors will lock at some point. But it does feel a bit like the doors are metaphorically being locked again now. I think that there is that thing, isn't there? That case that religion should be above. Worship should be above any kind of restrictions.
Yeah, but I think, as was mentioned in the introduction, we've seen loads of groups organising, parents that are concerned about their kids losing education. We've had the hospitality industry organising around the loss of jobs and opportunities for them. We've even had, airline services demanding that their cause be taken seriously, and rightfully so. But the church, which is, as you rightfully mentioned, meant to be above all of this and actually provide spiritual and moral guidance at a time when actually people are dying, people are fearful, people are lonely, and people are isolated. They have completely, in my view, abdicated their responsibility, and I think it's actually deeply, deeply sad. And I'm actually not necessarily a religious person, but I appreciate living in a Judeo-Christian society that recognises people's spiritual and moral needs. And actually, when the church abandons that in favour of restrictions, then I think that we end up living in a society that seems to be stifled away from all those things that make life worth living.
I can't believe there wasn't more of a massive hoo-ha, frankly, made out of. I think I'm right in saying it was a Polish Catholic service that took place around Easter, and the police raided it because it technically was, against the rules, right? But I thought maybe that could be a catalyst now for the Christian community, potentially, to come out and say, right, enough's enough. These were people, a lot of them had masks on, it was in a church, it was Easter. probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest day in the Christian calendar. People coming together after a year of being apart, of people dying, like you've said, financial ruin. Come on now, that's surely we can keep the churches open. But
absolutely, 1 in 5, I think it was in the statistics I read, of nativity plays for children have been closed down, even if the government has said they shouldn't. Some schools have taken it upon themselves. To me, that is a catastrophe for school children, and we need to be hearing the voices of church leaders saying why this is so essential for people's life.
I think anyone who saw me play a leading role in my primary school's nativity play, though, will tell you that it's probably a good thing that they've all been cancelled. Not as bad as when my mate had to stand as a Christmas tree, so he had to have his arms out like this for about 4 hours. It was just terrible for the guy. But anyway, right. Keep all your thoughts coming in to us on email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A chilly breeze blowing out there today, but for many it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. There will be some showers, these chiefly across the west. It's across the east where we've had so much of the rain through the night. It's an area of low pressure, really reluctant to clear and still bringing some patchy rain to parts of East Anglia. But elsewhere, it is looking a little drier. The winds, though, coming in from the northwest, and that's where we're feeding the showers in. So western Scotland, Northern Ireland, northwest England, North Wales, seeing heavy showers this morning, hail and thunder possible too. That rain finally ebbing away from Norfolk, which means most of eastern and southern England dry and bright with sunny spells. Only the small chance for shower here and there. Across the Midlands, we may see 1 or 2, and possibly in the southwest also. Even where we've got the showers, they'll tend to zip through on the breeze, but it will feel pretty chilly out there. Temperatures 5 to 7, maybe 8 Celsius, but add on that wind and it feels colder. The showers will mostly be of rain, but some snow over the Scottish hills, and we'll keep some showers feeding in this evening into northwest England and North Wales, so staying pretty wet here. But elsewhere, largely dry, clearer skies and lighter winds will allow a frost. You can see the blue hue on the map there for eastern Scotland, northeast England as we head into the weekend. So a cold and frosty start here, certainly in rural areas. Further west, more cloud and rain starting to spill in, so turning damp pretty quickly on Saturday morning across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. This area of rain then works in across the rest of the UK, not reaching eastern parts of England till pretty late in the day, so most of Saturday dry here, but it will, I suspect, feel pretty cold in the east, where we're going to start with some pockets of frost clouding over and temperatures only 5 or 6 at best. Further west it will be turning milder, but as you can see also wetter and windier. Plenty going on then this weekend. This set of weather fronts moving in for Saturday, and it links back to another area of low pressure that could bring some wet and windy weather in the northwest on Sunday, but will also turn things milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints over a drink we have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Iman and Patrick Christie's. We've got a show full of all of the big stories and big discussions that you care about, but first, let's have a look at the latest news.
Good morning, I'm Olivia Guthrie. This is your news at 11 o'clock. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is a step closer to being extradited following a win by the US government in London's High Court. Judges overturned a previous ruling that he shouldn't be sent to the US because of the risk of suicide. He's wanted on allegations of a conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information after hundreds of thousands of leaked documents on the Afghan and Iraq wars were published. He's expected to appeal the latest decision. The Prime Minister is under growing pressure as claims about number 10 Christmas parties continue to emerge. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says he's unfit to lead the country, with 3 gatherings allegedly held during lockdown last December, now being investigated by the Cabinet Secretary. Boris Johnson is also facing questions over whether he misled an investigation into donations to refurbish his flat after he was fined by the Electoral Commission.
Credibility is gone. I mean, there's been a succession of crises, and the latest debacle is the final straw. So I don't think he has a future. He could even be gone, sooner rather than later. I think it's over, and I think most people recognise that.
An increasing number of MPs say they'll vote against the new COVID rules next week. That's as Plan B is enforced across England in a bid to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Masks should now be worn in most indoor settings, including cinemas and theatres, but they're not required in hospitality settings like pubs. The measures come ahead of a return to working from home on Monday and mandatory COVID passports for large venues from Wednesday. Conservative MP Craig McKinley told GB News he can't support the government.
It's rather bizarre that the government's saying, well, we want to take some liberties away, but it's for your own liberty in the future. I don't like the sound of that. I'm not yet convinced. I don't want to go down the path of vaccine passports and mandation. I want a bit more data so that we can make the proper decisions at the right time, because this is going to cost jobs, lives, and mental health and livelihoods.
Well, there's also been a mixed response to the measures from the public.
I think the rules are full of contradictions, so I don't think they necessarily make much sense. I wonder if some of the rules are just brought into place just because they feel they have to.
That doesn't quite make sense. You either gather or you can't gather, whether it's a quick drink or a meal. There's no difference really, is there?
I think it's giving people a choice. If it's a question of working at home, you really have to do what your employer tells you. But with a Christmas party and going to the pub, you have a choice over whether or not you do that, and you can manage the risk yourself.
There are currently 817 cases of the Omicron variant in the UK. The Health Secretary Sajid Javid is warning that could rise to 1 million by the end of the month. Epidemiologist Dr. Roland Salmon says more scientific evidence should have been collated before measures were reintroduced.
Direct experience of managing infectious diseases in this country, I think, is in some ways lacking. If you get a bunch of scientists in a room to advise the government, you'll get a range of opinions from them. I think one of the things we've singly failed to do is to synthesize that in an intelligent way to have proportionate public policy.
Meanwhile, the UK is dealing with its largest ever outbreak of avian flu, with cases now identified across 40 properties. More than 20,000 birds have been culled in Northern Ireland, and the highly pathogenic H5N1 has also been discovered at a third property in Scotland. Exclusion zones are being set up around the affected properties. The government's announced plans to ban the import of hunting trophies from endangered animals 2 years after it was first pledged. The proposed law will prevent hunters from bringing home body parts of 7,000 species, including lions, rhinos, elephants and polar bears. The measures have been welcomed by campaigners, but the delay has been criticised. American actor Jussie Smollett has been found guilty of staging a racist and homophobic attack against himself. The US star of TV drama Empire paid two brothers to stage the hoax assault and then lied about it. Prosecutors said it was part of a bid to boost his career. Smollett was found guilty of 5 of the 6 charges against him. His lawyers say he'll appeal. I'll be back in half an hour.
Good morning, everyone. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Inaya Folarin-Iman and me, Patrick Christys, and we've got a massive final hour for you today. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, a new YouGov poll says Brits question the integrity of the Prime Minister as his own backbenchers start circling. Can Boris survive?
Yes, now it's reported in a French newspaper that the 27 migrants who drowned in the Channel last month telephoned British and French coastguards as they realised that their dinghy was deflating. We're going to speak to Phil Campion very shortly, who's actually made this journey across the Channel himself, and he's even got some footage of it for us, so you're not going to want to miss that.
And are they walking amongst us? NASA thinks that aliens may have already visited our planet, but did they stick around? We'll explore this in this hour.
Yeah, that's actually happening. And you can get involved in any of our conversations by sending your views to gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere.
Well, the Conservatives are having their worst poll rating in 11 months as the scandal continues over the alleged Christmas parties. The Times has reported that more than 2/3 of voters are now questioning Johnson's integrity over his response to the Downing Street Christmas party held while London was also in lockdown.
Was this not maybe baked in a bit with Boris Johnson already? Do you not think people already thought, hey, look, this guy's a bit of a character, a little bit of a cad as well, and maybe potentially that actually, did we not expect this kind of come out of a Christmas party? Hey, look, if you're being honest with me, did you have a Christmas party? Did you break a few of the rules,
Well, then he doesn't believe in the measures. He doesn't believe they work, because if you are saying, which there is objectively, a deadly virus, and actually following these measures will mitigate the spread, and then you are not following them as the person implementing them, then that sows doubt in the efficacy of these measures and whether or not people should even follow them.
I don't think it's as bad as what Mark Drakeford did, though, where he was seen.
He should be criticised as well.
Or Margaret Ferrier, she went to an international COVID tour.
She should be criticised as well. But this is the Prime Minister. He's ultimately accountable in the United Kingdom.
Yes, well, ultimately he is, I suppose. It'll be interesting to see how accountable he turns out to be.
Should we read out our poll?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let's do a poll. So we did a poll. We thought we'd throw it over to you, the nation.
I've got it here.
To see whether or not you thought that Boris Johnson should stay or go.
And we have the results. So, should he stay or go? The results are in. 33.8% say he should stay, and 66.2% say that he should go. So that's actually in line with the YouGov poll. 2/3 of the British public, or 2/3 of the GB News viewers, believe that Boris Johnson should go. So,
well,
is this saying something?
I think potentially, but hey, look, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Of course, there'll be an inquiry, and we'll just have to wait to see exactly. I did hear yesterday though, that apparently one of the people who've got to do this inquiry, Simon Case, is now alleged to have actually been at one of these parties. So I don't know. Obviously, you would imagine they would deny all of this stuff.
The party never happened, but if it did, the rules weren't broken.
Absolutely, and it's important. It's important. It's like something out of Yes Minister, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
But anyway, right. Look, we're going to move on. We're going to Well, I need to put Boris to bed, actually. That sounds a bit... He does that enough himself. But the French newspaper is reporting that the 27 migrants who died while trying to cross... Oh, sorry, I don't realise it's a shift in tone, this, ladies and gents. Apologies about this. So, there's a French newspaper is reporting that the 27 migrants who died while trying to cross the Channel last month had phoned both British and French Coast Guards for help. Now, 2 survivors said that the boat eventually sank despite desperate calls to rescue services. It's raising questions, of course, over the failure of Coast Guards on both sides of the Channel.
Well, in a few minutes, we'll speak to a former SAS trooper, Phil Campion, but here's a video he sent us highlighting how easy it is to cross the Channel.
Absolutely no attention from anybody whatsoever, and the whole thing's looking good. Okay, so behind me, the UK. To get here, a 2.5-hour trip in moderate weather. No great shakes, an easy feat by anyone's standards. With me, I've brought 3 people who want to get into the UK. They're here now, and they will get in. We've been unopposed all the way over from the other side. Nobody's fought to stop us or do anything about it. That is how easy it is to bypass immigration and border in the UK. Okay, so this is Folkestone Harbour. No harbour master, no police, no customs, no nothing. I could be running my own touring business here. I can get people in and out that easily. I'll jump in here as well, Rob. So I've pulled into Folkestone Harbour, as you can see, visiting mooring. Nobody's going to stop me, nobody's going to think this is unusual. This is broad daylight. I can do this whenever I like. So, 3 guys dropped from a rib into the UK, unopposed, absolutely nothing stopping me from doing that. Not even a raised eyebrow from the people watching.
Yeah, no, look, obviously we would not, condone or recommend that you should, copy what Phil did there. Phil was worthwhile saying former SAS trooper, so he kind of is made of quite stern stuff and certainly knows his way around, as it were. But it does show how easy it is, doesn't it? And it does show kind of, it highlights really just how easy a trip that is to make.
Well, I mean, the reality is people have died, and therefore it's not easy in all circumstances, and sometimes the weather is pretty disastrous, which either makes the boats capsize or move in a way that could be incredibly terrifying. So yes, whilst in some instances I think making the decision to do that journey can be, for often children, incredibly perilous and incredibly dangerous.
It can, and it's, if you are just joining us, the latest to come out of the sad death of 27 migrants in the Channel is that they did phone security services, apparently, or they did phone British police, and they did phone French authorities and border force and coast guards, etc, etc, etc. And obviously they weren't able to get to them in time, clearly, but it just shows, unless we stop this, in my opinion anyway, these things are just going to carry on. We're going to see more deaths because, look, a lot of these dinghies are flimsy, aren't they? A lot of the times the weather is bad.
But regardless of people's views on immigration or border control, making an illegal route should not be a death sentence. And I think that to me, it's actually it's terrifying, the idea that people are dying in the most horrendous way, drowning in the sea. And the fact that politicians use this as a political point scoring, from France to the Home Secretary, I think it is inhumane.
Yeah, well, I can see that. I think for me, it's the case of when it was happening. I mean, bear in mind, it seems like a long time ago now when one of the more established routes was to cross the Mediterranean. And I'm convinced that hundreds of people were dying every single day there. I think if you look, you know, at some of the reports that were coming in there, and this was absolutely horrendous. Of course it was, but it was allowed to continue to happen, wasn't it? And I worry now that we're going to be in a situation where we see people continuing to come over. It seems like they're breaking record numbers every single week, for example. And actually, that's it. If we kind of maybe are encouraging them in some way to do that with our actions or lack of border force or whatever, that might end up actually, you know, killing more people. But
what I find astonishing, I mean, that Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, making these grand promises, but you know, nothing she ever suggests actually either really gets implemented or either actually works. And where is the accountability? Where is the taking responsibility for the fact that people are dying under our watch? And yeah, I don't know.
Well, hopefully a little bit later on we are going to be speaking to Big Phil Campion, ex-SAS trooper, who was in that video there for you. Now, that video was shot a while ago, so Phil was actually really one of the first people to highlight, frankly, that this route was doable and potentially how easy it can be in certain situations. And so hopefully we will be getting to Big Phil a little bit later on. But after the break, we speak to a Durham University student demanding a safer and more inclusive campus. But first, it's the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A chilly breeze blowing out there today, but for many it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. There will be some showers, these chiefly across the west. It's across the east where we've had so much of the rain through the night. It's an area of low pressure, really reluctant to clear and still bringing some patchy rain to parts of East Anglia. But elsewhere, it is looking a little drier. The winds, though, coming in from the northwest, and that's where we're feeding the showers in. So Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northwest England, North Wales, seeing heavy showers this morning, hail and thunder possible too. That rain finally ebbing away from Norfolk, which means most of eastern and southern England dry and bright with sunny spells. Only the small chance for shower here and there. Across the Midlands, we may see one or two, and possibly in the southwest also. Even where we've got the showers, they'll tend to zip through on the breeze, but it will feel pretty chilly out there. Temperatures 5 to 7, maybe 8 Celsius, but add on that wind and it feels colder. The showers will mostly be of rain, but some snow over the Scottish hills, and we'll keep some showers feeding in this evening into northwest England and North Wales, so staying pretty wet here. But elsewhere, largely dry, clearer skies and lighter winds will allow a frost. You can see the blue hue on the map there for eastern Scotland, northeast England as we head into the weekend. So a cold and frosty start here, certainly in rural areas. Further west, more cloud and rain starting to spill in, so turning damp pretty quickly on Saturday morning across Northern Ireland and western Scotland. This area of rain then works in across the rest of the UK, not reaching eastern parts of England till pretty late in the day, so most of Saturday dry here, but it will, I suspect, feel pretty cold in the east, where we're going to start with some pockets of frost clouding over and temperatures only 5 or 6 at best. Further west it will be turning milder, but as you can see also wetter and windier. Plenty going on then this weekend. This set of weather fronts moving in for Saturday, and it links back to another area of low pressure that could bring some wet and windy weather in the northwest on Sunday, but will also turn things milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Yes, morning all. Now, welcome back. You're watching To The Point right here on GB News with Inaya Falarin-Iman and me, Patrick Christie.
Indeed. Well, hundreds of students have been protesting at Durham University as they demanded a safe and more inclusive campus. More than 300 students turned out to the demonstration after students who walked out of a speech by Spectator's associate editor Rod Liddell on the 3rd of December, where they were called pathetic by their principal, Professor Tim Luckhurst. Let's find out exactly what is going on at Durham University now with student Sophie Corrigan. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, do you think these students are pathetic? I mean, was that a reasonable thing for the principal to accuse them of?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any question about that. They planned to walk out before the speech.
Yeah, sorry, but quickly, but that's the absolute madness of it, right? Because, you know, it's like when people go to a comedy gig and they sit in the front row and they're like, I was offended from start to finish.
The thing is, a lot of people, when they went into the formal, didn't know even who Rod Liddell was. And then they walked out because other people were walking out, and then all of a sudden they're trying to sack one of our best principals. Like, I just don't see how that works personally, but there you go.
One of the things that's really interesting is that in a matter of days, 400 students were able to organise. Why don't the students on campus that are pro-free speech or students that are sceptical of this, why aren't they organising in the numbers to show that these students don't represent students? Because we have this happen, which is quite a significant number. Then the press we will go, oh, these students, you know, they're all into cancel culture. But then there are students like yourself who don't agree. And why don't we see more organising from those who support free speech?
Well, I think it was able to be organised so quickly because of the societies that are involved, and all of the student positions are run by lefty lunatics. They just are. Like the president of the Durham Students' Union hailed Jeremy Corbyn as, I quote, the white king, and said that any conservatives should be dealt with by roadmen. So I love how they always talk about safe spaces. I mean, you're not giving me very much of a safe space being a conservative, are you?
No.
If you're saying that we should be attacked by roadmen.
And what is it like for a student like yourself on campus who is maybe more small c conservative, or even someone that, you know, is pro-free speech? What does it feel like in that environment?
Well, I mean, most people hide the fact that they're pro-free speech because they know what's coming. But for those of us that don't, and those of us, obviously, I'm unfortunate in the fact that I'm not only a conservative, I'm also relatively high profile. So I just stood no chance, really, when I got there. I mean, I've been shouted at in the streets. I've had people come up to me all the time.
Talk to us a bit about that then. So how did that happen? So you've been at university now for one term.
Yeah,
So you've just finished your first term. Yeah. And already in that first term, what's happened? You've had people shouting at you in the street. Just talk us through what actually physically happened there.
Yeah, so one time it was like 2 in the morning. I just got back from London, and I was just walking through with my headphones in, with my little suitcase, and some girl come up to me and she tapped me and she was like, "You're Sophie, aren't you?" And I was like, "Well, yes." And then she was like, "Oh, you're a transphobe." And she started screeching, you know, all of the lefty buzzword bingos that they can get out of the book, everything with ist and ism on the end.
Yeah.
And she was just screaming at me down the street, and I was all the way down the other end of the street, and I could still hear this lass screaming. I was like, what?
But the thing is, when we hear about university, we think this is meant to be a space for rigorous academic debate, you know, the clash of ideas in an intellectual way. And this is what all the stories we're hearing about it now. You hear more often than not students or even other academics against each other shutting down speech than opening up the space. I mean, doesn't that say something very sad about wider society?
Yeah, and you actually mentioned something that I find quite interesting is that other academics, and now recently all of them at Durham have been turning on Tim. Like we've had so many emails of our students from other academics. I mean, my favourite one was the head of biology, Patrick, you're going to love this. The head of biology stated that Rod Liddell's statements were flawed and offensive. The head of biology.
But my thing is that, you know, being offended is not...
No.
That doesn't... You know, you don't have a right to not be offended. No. You know, actually...
I'm offended by stuff all the time.
I'm offended by what they've done. You know, I'm offended.
But you're right, go on. I mean, it's true, isn't it? It's not a God-given right to not ever see or hear anything offensive whatsoever.
One of the things I saw in one of the statements, one of the students' groups, that they said student welfare should not be sacrificed in favour of free and academic speech. So student welfare, safety is now more important than free speech, which is a fundamental right for all. And do you think that this is contributing to a view of young people as victims, as vulnerable, as, you know, just babies?
Yeah, I think it's a very childish view. I mean, a lot of them are saying that Rod Liddell is saying that, like, if you have a penis, you're a bloke, is a hate crime. Like, it's definitely not. But it's so annoying as a student. I'm genuinely sick of it, of these people being able to determine who we can and can't have on campus, because they are not the only students on campus. There are other people, and we pay because we want to hear different views, and they're incredibly selfish in what they're doing by saying that I don't like this person, so therefore nobody else should ever be able to hear what they've got to say because I don't like them, because they're snowflakes.
And just quickly, you mentioned that you've had negative responses. Have you had any fellow students or students across the country at all messaging you saying, you know, keep on going, keep on doing what you're doing, we agree?
Oh yeah, all the time. I think a lot of people are too scared to say how they feel because they know that they are going to be harassed on campus.
So can I just ask, what do you think now the root cause of this is? Is it that, where do they get these ideologies from? Or where do they get their such strongly held convictions from? Is it something that happens when they're at school? Is it groupthink? What's it coming from? Because for me, it wasn't like this when I was at university, and that wasn't that long ago.
It was definitely starting like that for me.
Yeah, I think, you know, I mean, like we said, the head of biology thinks that if you have a penis, you're a bloke, is apparently flawed. So there we go. So the teachers are pushing this as well. It's another thing of groupthink. I think, you know, we've got the whole Instagram infographic culture where if they put a petition on Instagram that somehow the world is going to change, even though it's not going to, just because it makes them morally better than everyone else. So it's a mixture of through school. Even, you know, the first thing I got to university, and I study business. Let me put that out. I don't do politics. I study business, and for some reason my lecturer was like, anybody who is not a straight white man under the Tories, your life is hell. I was like, right, that's great. What's this got to do with business?
Yeah.
Like, well...
It's also not true.
No, but like it comes from the lecturers, and it even comes through, you know, sixth forms and things like that. It starts throughout school, you know, most teachers nowadays are sort of, you know, left-wing activists. We've seen them all come out the works in COVID. And that's where young people get it from. And then because they're brought into that and their peers are there, there's no challenging that. And those that do challenge that are often, you know, run the risk. Because I always get told when I call out my university, be careful. Why should I be careful?
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to be careful.
No, it's not China.
No, exactly. But this is what it's coming to. Everyone's like, you know, just be careful. Even people like, you know, on the radio, some of the presenters I've worked with, they say, "Soph, just be careful." And I'm like, I shouldn't have to be careful.
No.
I should be able to say and call out their rubbish without thinking I'm going to lose my place in my degree or get kicked out of uni for doing nothing.
There's certainly, sorry to interrupt, but there's certainly some views that we might give you a little boost. Anyway, fight the good fight. You're fearless and more like you are needed. And and Chris has said he thinks you're a brave young woman. Stand up to these left-wing lunatics. There you go. Good stuff.
Well, I think many people would echo. Very impressive student.
Yes.
Sophie Corcoran. Thank you for joining us.
Right.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we're going to delve into the terrifying world of my inbox for a second or two, are we? How does being inclusive reconcile with refusing to accept people with different views? This is, of course, about what we were just discussing there with Rod Liddle, essentially some students standing up and deciding to walk out of his speech because he'd hurt their feelings. So, yes, it's a hard one to reconcile.
I think Sophie made a really good point in the sense of, I think it's starting very, very young now. We just we see these students and think, oh, this is lefty students. No, they're being taught. They didn't make up these ideas on their own. They're getting these things from the teachers, from the academics that are the ones that are creating all these academic theories that deconstruct everything about society. And I think the adults in the room need to take responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's, if we do create a situation where young people, like the guest we just had on there, Sophie, feel as though, obviously, thankfully, she doesn't feel like this, she's continued to speak up, but feel as though they need to be careful, that they might be alienated by their student community, especially in that environment. If you're in a halls of residence or a college or something, or you're on a campus, it's very easy for things to go viral, isn't it? It's very easy for you to become public enemy number one. And actually, a lot of the time, most of the time, people would rather just keep their mouth shut than risk that happening. And that's a concern, though.
Exactly. And, not everyone you would be comfortable going on television like Sophie. So if you are someone that's perhaps on the fence and the people that you are meant to trust, academics, administrators are saying, be careful, don't do that, then you're going to retreat because you would think, well, what do I know? Yeah. So I think it's hugely chilling. And I think we are raising a generation to be victims and intolerant.
Oh, absolutely. And hateful as well. That's the thing, hateful. There's loads of people that I dislike, and there's no doubt there's loads of people who dislike me as well, but I don't walk up to them in the street and start haranguing them at 2 o'clock in the morning.
You don't organise protests of 400 people demanding that they are removed from, society for daring to question you.
No, ridiculous. But anyway, right, after the break, joining us soon is spaceflight and astronomy commentator Andrew Lound, who'll be talking us through a groundbreaking report from NASA suggesting that we may not be alone in the universe after all.
Ooh, I'm excited.
They've already been here, apparently. Might explain a lot. But anyway, before that, let's have a look at this morning's news.
I'm Olivia Guthrie. Here are the latest headlines. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is a step closer to being extradited following a win by the US government in London's High Court. Judges overturned a previous ruling that he shouldn't be sent to the US because of the risk of suicide. He's wanted on allegations of a conspiracy to obtain and disclose national defence information. His fiancée, Stella Morris, says they'll appeal the latest decision. The Prime Minister's under growing pressure as claims about number 10 Christmas parties continue to emerge. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says Boris Johnson's unfit to lead the country after 3 gatherings were allegedly held during lockdown last December. The PM's also facing questions over whether he misled an investigation into donations to refurbish his flat. An increasing number of MPs say they'll vote against the new COVID rules next week. That's as Plan B is enforced across England in a bid to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. Masks should now be worn in most indoor settings. Working from home will be reintroduced from Monday. The UK is dealing with its largest ever outbreak of avian flu, with cases now identified across 40 properties. More than 20,000 birds have been culled in Northern Ireland, and the virus has been discovered at a 3rd property in Scotland. Exclusion zones are being set up around the affected areas. You're right up to date. I'll be back with more of today's top stories at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Morning everyone, welcome back. You are watching To The Point on GB News with Inaya Florent-Iman and me, Patrick Christie's.
Yes, the Conservatives are having their worst poll rating in 11 months as the scandal continues over the alleged Christmas party. The Times has reported that more than 2/3 of voters are also now questioning Johnson's integrity over the response to the Downing Street Christmas party held in London where we were all locked down.
Well, joining us now is James Hanning, former deputy editor of The Independent on Sunday and co-author as well of Cameron, The Rise of the New Conservative. Thank you very much for joining us. So, how damaging do you think...
Hi, Patrick. Hi, Inaya.
Oh, hello. How damaging do you think this poll will be? Polls go up and down, don't they? They come and go with the wind, or is this one terminal?
Well, that's what Boris must be hoping, that they will go up and down. And Boris, Boris has had a lot of luck, and he may see this out. I mean, what if the Omicron virus isn't as bad as people are fearing, and Christmas is coming, and he may scrape through with the by-election next week, and he may just get away with it. But the thing about Boris is that we've sort of known this about him. Can I just read you something? I came across this morning. Somebody wrote about him. He really has adopted a disgracefully cavalier attitude. Boris sometimes seems affronted when criticised for what amounts to a gross failure of responsibility. I think he honestly believes that it is churlish of us not to regard him as an exception, one who should be free of the network of obligation which binds everyone else. Now, that was written by his housemaster at school 40 years ago. Now, we've known this about Boris. He does think the rules are for the little people. And he sees himself as a rather, as a big Churchillian figure. And so the people who didn't want Boris to be leader of the Tory party have been pointing this out. And now it looks as if, the secret's out. More people are getting to see what he's like. Now, that's not to say he's not a very gifted figure, and he's very amusing and he has a lot of charm and so on. But he doesn't do details, as we've seen, very much to his embarrassment in the last week or so.
Look, one thing I'm seeing, I have our emails right in front of me throughout the show, of course, and look, I've got to be honest with you, a lot of people regard this as a Westminster bubble story. People don't really give a stuff that he may or may not have had a Christmas party. There's bigger things at play, we might be about to go to war with Russia, for goodness sake, and whatever's going on in the Channel and all of this stuff, and people are actually saying, hang on a minute, it was a year ago, let it go. Maybe it's only people, in the media or in and around Westminster who actually care about it.
Yeah, well, there is something in that, I think, and I know journalists are always, you may not agree with this, but journalists, in my experience, are always a bit neurotic about that, and they always think, is it just a Westminster bubble? So they're kind of aiming off a bit and thinking, well, are we getting overexcited about this? It fills newspapers, but is it actually of general interest? There is, though, I mean, that poll, that 2/3 of people don't believe the Prime Minister, that's pretty bad. And I think, I don't know. As I say, he may get over it. He may, knowing Boris, he could well bounce back. Christmas is coming, we'll all have a lull. There's no obvious alternative to Boris in the Tory party. And certainly Starmer doesn't yet look like a Prime Minister in waiting. So, he may, and it may just turn out to be a kind of midterm, slump for him. But on the specifics of some of these stories, they don't look good at all. And, there's talk of Lord Gate, who I think should be renamed the greatly respected Lord Gate. Everyone seems to think he's absolutely marvellous. Anyway, Lord Gate, he's clearly very unsettled by this news we've heard, in the last day or so about the refurbishing of the flat. There's all this stuff about the parties. It doesn't look very good. But I wouldn't rule him out bouncing back, actually.
And you mentioned that Keir Starmer doesn't look like a Prime Minister in waiting. Isn't that one of the fundamental problems here, that actually we don't really have an opposition and even an alternative programme? I mean, we've had Tory backbenchers saying they're going to rebel over these new restrictions, and the Labour Party supporting it. So where does that leave the public, who are not really happy with either option?
No, well, I think you're right, Anaya. But I would also say that COVID is a very difficult subject. Objectively, it's one of those really, really difficult subjects. It's not something any Prime Minister can just wave a magic wand and the problem goes away. It's a really tricky issue. Labour are all over the place, actually, as well. I think Starmer looks more like a possible Prime Minister than Jeremy Corbyn, but you may say that's not a very high bar. No, I don't. He's scoring a few points, Starmer. I agree, but
also, James,
I'm a bit surprised he hasn't made more of a mark on Boris, actually.
You mentioned that he's scoring a few points. I mean, do you think that it's right for him to continue to push on this party story? I mean, do you think that's a good tactic for him in terms of chipping away at Boris's public profile, or do you think that this is pretty much, a waste of time?
Well, generally speaking, I mean, the thing about Boris is that he's like Trump. He's changed the rules, and as I say, somebody who'd been sacked twice before he even became an MP for lying, most people wouldn't have pressed on and wanted to go into Parliament and you just say that man's a liar, we're not having him. With Boris, the rules are completely different. So you may be right. It may be that people don't really care about how honest Boris is. They think he's all the fashionable things. He's relatable. He's funny. He's charming. And he has a certain sort of cavalier attraction, and the trust issue actually doesn't cut any ice with people. But there are different rules for Boris. Boris has always believed the rules are different for him than for everyone else, and that may turn out to be right.
Well, and to be fair, he's ended up in Downing Street,
Does that tell us something about our society?
Absolutely. If somebody had said 3 or 4 years ago Boris will be Prime Minister and he'll win a huge majority and blah, 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 you would say, of course not. He's completely untrustworthy. He doesn't do administration. He's never run anything. He's got no grip. I do think, actually, on the question of what it is that cuts through, I do think just this general lack of grip, I think that doesn't look good, and that does tend to damage Prime Ministers. People want a sense that the Prime Minister is in control, he's in charge of the ship, and it's sailing in roughly, and everyone's united in sailing in the same direction. Yeah. And I don't think we're getting much of that at the moment. And Boris is not good on that sort of stuff.
Well, look, thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed that, James. This is James Hanning there, former deputy editor of The Independent on Sunday and co-author of Cameron, The rise of the new Conservatives. So there we go.
Yeah, no, I think, Jamie, that's a really interesting point about Boris Johnson playing by his own rules. I think that's completely spot on. We had many of his comments that any other prospective Prime Minister would have been laughed at for some of the things he said about, watermelon smiles and tank top, this and that. And obviously his record about being, lying in the past. I think that it is interesting that that's also to some extent his attraction, his ability to brush it all off.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And look, Michelle, here we go again. Patrick, we all know politicians lie. This is why people aren't really bothered. There's more important things going on, and we should talk about those. And this is it. It's almost a bit of a 50-50 split when it comes to whether or not you think now Boris is his credibility is just shot to pieces. He's finished, he's over, he should go before he's pushed, and people who just don't care.
Who would replace him? This is the thing. If we have Rishi Sunak, he's I think he's David Cameron type of Conservative. What about Liz Truss? She's all about trade. Priti Patel. I mean, who's going to replace
After
him?
NASA's report, I don't see why we don't just hand it over to one of our alien overlords.
Good.
We should just do that. Just do that. They know what they're doing. Yeah. Right, just before we do indeed start talking about what NASA's been saying, as we mentioned earlier, a French newspaper is actually reporting, of course, that some of the 27 migrants who were on the dinghy that sadly sunk in the Channel, and indeed they died, had tried to phone both British and French Coast Guards for help. 2 survivors said the boat eventually sank, obviously, despite these desperate calls to the rescue services, raising questions over, potentially anyway, the failure of Coast Guards on both channels. Well, former SAS trooper Phil Campion joins us now. Earlier on, Phil, we played a video. There he is. Thank you very much for joining us. Earlier on, we did play that video of you making your way across the Channel. I think it's important just to say, obviously, look, some of these migrants are setting off from beaches, not necessarily harbours, and potentially their boats were a bit more flimsy than the one that you were in. But it's the principle of it, isn't it, I think, Phil, really, that, you can get across that body of water.
I've been saying for a long time, Patrick, I'd get across there on an inflatable crocodile if I needed to get you across here. Well, and I'm willing to prove it as well, do you know what I mean? It is not a difficult thing to do. And on the same score, it is not a difficult thing to police.
Well, that is the question, because, I mean, what is the point you're actually trying to make, Phil? Because people, whether or not it's easy or difficult isn't really the point. It's that some people are trying to get here, and that's what people have a problem with. So what would you say that your video is trying to tell us?
My primary reason for that video was to try and get somebody to do something about it before we lost life out there. We've gone past that stage now, and mainly because when I put that video up, Channel 4 tried to discredit it, and then obviously had to do a U-turn on that. But it was too late by then. The problem was getting bigger. When that video first came out, we should have started doing stuff about it. I proved how easy it was, how you could get in and out on anything you liked. So my main point for this video was to try and stop people coming backwards and forwards, because just coming one way, really. But it is an extremely easy thing to do. And I could see right back then that life was going to be lost.
Well, that's it. I mean, and I'm concerned now, I've made this point earlier, that unless we do something about it, and whatever that solution may well be, I can't sit here and claim to have all the answers, but unless we do something about it, if we keep having these number of people coming over the Channel, by definition, we're going to keep having people dying, right? And that's that. You said it's an easy thing. You said it's an easy thing to police, Phil. Is it though? Because to be honest with you, it doesn't look like we've got the resources for it, does it?
Well, it's an easy thing to police if you put the resources on it. We've got resources to pull people off roundabouts in London and green protesters and all that sort of stuff. We can put resources wherever we want. The job in hand is a fairly simple one to do. You patrol the beaches, you stop people coming off them. A blind man on a galloping horse wouldn't take the brains of an archbishop to work that one out, would they? It's having the willing to do so and then finding the manpower. It's not a hard thing to do, Patrick. It's an easy thing to do.
Are you? I mean, do you have a number in mind of how many? I mean, you've obviously been on a fair few military operations in your life, Phil. Have you got a number in mind of like how many boats we might need or whatever?
Yeah, I reckon I could do the whole job with a decent battalion of paratroopers with a bit of seaborne backup.
So, do you think it's about willpower more than resources?
I think it's got to be about willpower, isn't it? Somebody's got to want to actually stop the problem. The French have got no interest. The French are quite happy with them to just keep bowling over it. And whatever we make it such a happy proposition for them when they get here, then they're going to keep coming, aren't they? So there are lots of other things we can do, but nobody seems to be willing to do anything about it, and it just keeps happening.
Can I just ask you about one of the national security elements of it? Again, you know, you obviously former SAS trooper, you know a thing or two about how threatened or otherwise we are as a nation, how many people don't wish us well, particularly. Are you concerned with what's going on now? Are you making the point that, in your opinion anyway, it's just relatively easy to get across? How much of a national security risk does that pose as far as you're concerned?
But look, I said at the time as well, Patrick, you know, if I can do this in a fairly decent boat, undetected, all right, imagine if I didn't want to put people in that boat, and imagine if I thought, tell you what I'll do, I'll bring a crate of AK-47s along for the next party in London. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take the brains of an archbishop to work. If you don't police it properly, bad things will happen. And so in that respect, yes, it's an extremely frightening proposition that you can cut about backwards and forwards across that channel, more or less unopposed, and bring whatever you like.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a concern. Of course it is. Well, look, Phil, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing that video with us as well. And we'll get you back on soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Former SAS trooper there, Phil Campion. And, yeah, I mean, look, he's highlighting an issue, isn't he? I think, again, look, it is important. So it's all very well and good Phil saying, yeah, look, hey, I could get back across there on anything, and I've got no doubt he could, probably, because he was former SAS. But he obviously was setting off from a harbour in a slightly better boat, by the looks of things, than what a lot of these people are setting off from, and they're setting off from beaches, etc., etc., etc. So, yeah, OK, there's differences there, but I think the key point was that it's relatively easy to do, isn't it?
Yeah, and, you know, I totally understand the frustration and exasperation about what is going on the channel, but I think the attention needs to be directed at those that are accountable for that, and that is the Home Secretary and the Immigration Services. And I think that, you know, when we elevate these people as the problem, I think that we are not holding those who are genuinely responsible accountable.
Yeah, well, we're going to move on from the channel, and yeah, this is where we're going to end the show. We're going to talk about aliens, ladies and gentlemen. So, according to a report by NASA, aliens may have already visited Earth, apparently. And yes, what do you think? Do you think they're not against the possibility that extraterrestrial life exists?
You know, I've heard some theories that actually we are actually genetically combined with aliens. That you know, technology and you know, all of the. Well, you know, this is you know, it's sci-fi. You have, you know, fantasy. You know, why not?
Yeah, well, no, so, well, at the end of the day, we just don't know, do we, right? So a freedom of information request to NASA by governmentattic.org, apparently, released this information on the 13th of November this year.
Well, a senior US official said 21 of the reports show UFOs appear to have some sort of advanced population or advanced technology. Lawmakers demanded these findings be released after 120 incidents over the last 20 years were reported by the US military.
Yes, well, there we go.
The report also...
Oh, go on, yeah, sorry. Sorry, this report also marks a turning point for the US government after military spent decades deflecting, debunking and discrediting observations of UFOs. So it's a bit of an about turn, isn't it?
Wow. I mean, this could be it.
I'm fascinated. I feel like we're being prepped. You know, maybe they just thought, look, hey, after this pandemic, people are already accepting some weird stuff. Maybe now's the time to lob an alien into the mix. But anyway, joining us now is Andy Lown, presenter, author and space commentator. Welcome, Andy. So, are they amongst us?
Well, I don't think they are, but it's an interesting thing. I think the important thing that's happened here is we've seen that NASA... A report by NASA has made it quite clear that we could have been visited in the past, and that the investigation has to go into UFOs, as they used to be called. They're actually aerial phenomena, they now tend to call them, unidentified aerial phenomena. And I think that's quite sensible from a scientific point of view. I think there's been a great reluctance in the past for agencies, especially government agencies, to come out in public and state that we could have been visited or UFOs could actually be extraterrestrial vehicles, because I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, the lack of evidence. And to be fair, the report does point out that although we do have these objects being seen in the sky, there is no direct evidence to suggest immediately they're extraterrestrial. And there's also a concern of worrying the public or getting people worked up a little bit about what could be out there visiting our planet. But again, it's all down from a scientific point of view to hardcore evidence. And regardless of what people have seen and reported, which they do in good faith, no question about that at all. And regardless of what we have photographic evidence, which a lot of it even then seems to be a bit blazy. We don't have this great, perfectly framed photograph, which we actually need. There is no hardcore evidence you can put in front of a court, and that's the important thing about it.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that came out. I think it's the USS Nimitz, which had loads of footage. It's a USS American Navy vessel, right? And they had loads of footage of little tic-tac-shaped UFOs. They were trying to track them. I mean, I've actually interviewed a guy who was the Master-at-Arms at the USS Nimitz, and he seems like a completely normal bloke, I've got to be honest with you. But he, straight down the line, is like, he's adamant what he saw there was not human.
What he saw there was not something he was aware of. I mean, we can say not human. That's a dangerous statement to make because we just don't know what it was. And that's the danger where we could actually jump from the fact that we're talking about UAPs, UFOs, and immediately jump to flying saucers. That's the mistake, I think.
Do you think we've got? Do you think we have technology? In your opinion, then, instead of it maybe being aliens, we have got some form of technology that with the public.
You'll be surprised what technology lurks in the hidden depths of the United States, even the United Kingdom, and in Russia and in China. You'll be surprised what sort of technology lurks there. Experimental material. You will be surprised, and it's not in the interests usually to let everybody know what is going on. And that is one of these problems we have. These dark areas which is happening. But the NASA report is quite important in one aspect, which I think we really need to think about, that we could have been visited in the past. And that's quite an important statement to make, because we see a lot of these TV shows and these great characters. I must admit, I love these characters which come on and they make this sudden leap that, say Native Americans talk about the sky people that came down and they did the illustrations on rocks. Really interesting. Then they make the ridiculous leap, and I have to say it is a ridiculous leap, that pyramids were energy sources and things like that. And that, I think, hasn't helped the matter scientifically. I think we've got to keep in a narrow band.
And quick question, Andy. I mean, why do we assume that they're going to be, these physical beings in a spaceship? For all we know, they could be, just mind and consciousness. I mean, some of the scientists, physicists, have this idea of a multiverse where there's different dimensions. I mean, there could be a whole different understanding of what aliens are.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely right. Your imagination, you've obviously got fantastic imagination. You love your science fiction. I think it's great. I love you for that. That's brilliant. But in the cold, hard world of science, it's about evidence, and we have to have evidence, and that is really important. You can imagine anything you like, but I can tell you this now. Nature
quickly, yes or no? Have you seen an alien? Yes or no? Have you ever seen an alien?
No, of course not.
No.
I've got right. Thank you very much, Andy. Fantastic stuff. Andy Lown there joining us, presenter, author, space commentator, and I've just seen Isabel Oakeshott sashay away into the studio. And this is really happening, Isabel. Yes, I can promise you, you're not living in a bad dream. But anyway, that is it from us. Isabel will be up very, very shortly now with the briefings. Make sure you tune in for that.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good morning. A chilly breeze